Welcome to the show. It's starting as soon as we go live here. Wake you up. Like the foundation. Came back to expose you.
Wanna know now? Yep, Nostradamus and don't hit y'all with some up shit. Drifty flow from the future, yo. Lifting the new shit. Ain't shit gon' happen, yo. It was so tragic, yep, it was a travesty when they tried to put the screen on the sky, yo. UFO flying by, yo. Laser implants up in your spine, yo. Wake up your mind, yo, and sit back, relax, while I take you on the ride. Slow the black flow. Yep, I got you in the zone.
In the zone.
You ready to go? Got the
New implants out.
Send Joe to push you up in your house and take you out. In my new spaceship, you're paralyzed now. Call me a visitor, shadow person. Take you up, just
Testing your DNA.
I'ma need to track you, cause I know
The
you're
future man.
I'ma know where you be and what you gonna do. So I'ma need to control you and tell you what to do. In the heat, in the moment of time, it must be happening. When I know the future, I know who's there to happen. Who's to fix it, who's to push the button, pull the trigger, so I implant them. Hope for the best, so when it happens, I control the best of the human in their flesh. Yep, you dig?
Dang. You didn't catch the end part of that one.
Must be happening when I know the future. I know who's there to happen. Who's to fix it, who's to push the button, pull the trigger, so I implant them. Hope for the best, so when it happens, I control the best
humans in their flesh.
Yep.
Getting them. Getting them.
Taking nothing. You know I can come up with something. If I ain't going nowhere, I said, yo, I've been crazy, been locked up, yep, been shady, been hated on, been too blazed on, never been smoked in, flips in the whip, get hot, get drunk, get shifted, get shitted drunk, yeah, not that shit, then I jump in the whip, you know I'm cold and warm, my life ain't taking nothing, no, I can come up with something. If I ain't going nowhere, I said, yo, I've been crazy, been locked up, that wrong, my life ain't taking nothing, no, I can come up with something. If I ain't going nowhere, I said, yo,
Coronavirus in the video.
Like
2012.
You can draw, take some Tylenol, you get the headache out your head, man, cause you be talking too much shit, yeah, I don't know, PMS, no shit. I just pump the trips, man. Hard to steal, man. Yeah, like real, man. You hear? Yep, you smell like beefcake. Yeah, eat shake, you better get the fuck out my face. I be moving, and I'm scared about the penitentiary. If it's waiting for me, now you ain't coming through. You up with this shit that wrong. My life ain't taking nothing. No, I can come up with something.
They ready to come through, shoot you up with their shit. Coronavirus. Ain't taking nothing. Going nowhere. Motherfuckers. God, I'm gonna get. That's the intro. I'm gonna try to make the intro like that somehow. It's all good though. Boom, boom. Now we get the call-in show. So I guess I didn't have my phone by me, I guess, yesterday. When I was into that, I just jumped on like Google, said some shit, and I got that popping. It's a long video, but we're gonna get in today. I'm gonna maybe get some freestyle videos going. Get on some shit. Yeah, no viewers, one person. One's dying. These people. It's loud.
ศักดิ์ศรีหรือเปล่าพี่เวลาท้องเกียรติยศเวลาอ้างเราว่าเราเป็นประชาชนให้ประชาชนพวกพี่ไม่ได้อายใจบ้างเหรอ
Big
พี่
ass cancer.
ได้ที่ทำอยู่เนี่ยมันเป็นการทำร้ายประชาชนขณะที่กลุ่มเสื้อเหลืองออกมาปกป้องสถาบันทำไมทำได้แล้วทำไมพวกเราจะต้องการปฏิรูปสถาบันกษัตริย์ไม่ได้ตกลงเจ้าหน้าที่ตำรวจใจเลือกยิงอยู่ข้างคนเสื้อเหลืองที่อ้างว่ารักเจ้าใช่หรือไม่การที่เจ้าหน้าที่ตำรวจทำแบบนี้มันเป็นการบอกว่าพวกพี่ก็ได้เลือกข้างและเช่นกันจริงที่พี่เลือกข้างอยู่พี่เลือกตัวข้างผู้มีอำนาจพี่เลือกตัวข้างเจ้าพี่เลือกตัวข้างประยุทธ์พี่เลือกตัวข้างคนเสื้อเหลืองขณะเดียวกันพี่หันหน้ามาใส่พวกเราประชาชน
Special design diet vehicle.
มาโดยตลอดแล้วพวกพี่ไม่กล้าแล้วพอพวกเรามาทำพวกพี่กลับเป็นคนมาห้ามพวกเรานี่เรามีศักดิ์ศรีแล้วคำสั่งมันไม่ชอบพี่รู้ไหมข้างหน้าครับข้างหน้าใจเย็นข้างหน้าขอรถพยาบาลครับรถพยาบาลมาหน่อยครับรถพยาบาลนะครับรถพยาบาลพี่น้องกาดข้างหน้าดูด้วยนะครับอย่าคว้างขวดน้ำนะครับพี่น้องกาดข้างหน้าอย่าคว้างขวดนะครับน้ำเย็นลงมาข้างหน้าช่วยกันเตรียมน้ำส่งไปข้างหน้าล้างตาเดี๋ยว
That guy's annoying as shit.
จะสู้กับเราก็ดันรั้วเหล็กตัวเองออกมา
I'll be protesting if that dude behind my speaker too.
แต่ก็มากพอถ้าจะประกาศอะไรสวนให้คนมายืนบนหลังรถแล้วยกมือคุยกันอย่างมีมารยาทอย่าพูดแทรกในขณะที่คนอื่นเขาพูดเขาเรียกว่าสกุลเขาเรียกว่าไม่ได้รับการศึกษาถ้า
Let me get that video out that one channel. fucking World Economic Forum. Let me see this.
Right now we're facing a crisis of international proportion. It's a healthcare crisis, but it's also an economic crisis. It's going to have long-term impact for us. And we're going to see that the biggest impact is actually going to be acceleration of inequality.
The systematic way that we have been built is not holding up. The foundation is cracking.
Our duties remain the same. The fact that we should not leave anybody behind again.
Many organizations have seen what the impact is of a sudden crisis and how we're able to better navigate this crisis today with the help of technology. And that means the reskilling and upskilling of your own workforce.
Jobs of tomorrow are technologically enabled, but also
today, the impact of a sudden crisis and how we're able to better navigate this crisis today with the help of technology. And that means the reskilling and upskilling of your own workforce.
Jobs of tomorrow are technologically enabled, but also extremely human-centered. It's in the ability to work with technology easily.
On the other hand, with this new way of working, and especially remote work, we see that there is a huge need of emotional intelligence.
We have really to invest a lot in people to guarantee their jobs, but also to allow them the mobility they need on an ever-changing labor market.
8 out of 10 of the young people who are in low and middle income countries are going to have to be entrepreneurs. They're going to have to make jobs for themselves.
Having creative curriculums and teaching creativity is enabling your learners to have transferable skills, resilience, mastery, collaboration, asking questions, why, how, when. This is what they need in order to thrive in any profession which they choose.
The moment you incorporate marginalized segments of society, it changes the product offering, it changes the way that we think about supply chains. When you cater to the margins, the positive externalities in economic terms are pretty enormous.
It is critical that leadership understand that the burden of responsibility of driving change starts at the top of the organization, so that corporations can give back to the communities, make them more resilient as we deal with these issues around both economic and racial inequality.
We need men and women leading the recovery, because there is no way we can ever think that a world that is led by men is a world that is good for everybody.
Now is the moment that we can think about how we use that possibility, the new ideas, the new technology, the new wealth, to really create social systems in which we can all flourish.
We have the greatest brains, talent, resources in the world. There's no reason that we can't, and no excuses that it's too hard or too complicated.
Good morning and welcome to day 2 of the Green Horizon Summit, organised by the Green Finance Institute, the City of London Corporation, together with the World Economic Forum. Yesterday surely was a landmark in the rise of green finance.
Landmark.
The UK government committed to a sovereign green bond in 2021 and set out a pathway for mandatory climate risk disclosure.
Briefly introduce Macquarie.
Scary looking people.
As a global investor and financier,
eyebrows, bitch.
We're working to accelerate the
Where's
global
your eyebrows?
green transition in three main ways. First, meeting the need for more renewable energy.
This lady, look at her eyes, man. Damn. Her lips are so pale. She needs some blood. Got some milk and shit. I'm fucking it up. She needs some milk. Look at her damn. Fucking sorceress, evil. Look at this shit. She's casting spells on you right now and moving her hands around.
25 gigawatts of new projects.
She can't even move her hands. It's probably like stuck like that. Look at her skinny ass fingers. She needs to eat some. Why you on? They didn't push you on a screen. They didn't push you, rolled you out to stand up. Can you stand? Can you stand for 5 minutes and tell your story?
Our Mira business, the world's largest real asset manager.
Chimera ass.
And finally, helping our clients
Her
to
lips are sticking to her
decarbonise.
teeth.
This is a priority across
Look at
our
that shit.
activities, including our commodities and global
She needs some
markets
milk.
business, recognised recently as the environmental
She's
markets
trying to get
man
blood or
of
something.
the year.
She's drinking
We're
baby
active
blood
in
and shit.
decarbonisation solutions across energy, agriculture, transportation, waste,
Face ain't even
industrial
on right. Look at that person
and
walking in
real
the back.
estate.
Look at that.
Last month we held our
demon
own
and shit,
virtual
yeah, it's
conference on the energy transition, bringing together over 1,500
Wig is on
clients and
sideways,
stakeholders.
lips ain't on
And
right,
like
you
this
didn't push your
event,
face
it was
on
an
all the way.
affirming reminder
Skin
of the
suits loose.
determination across the public and
Cut your
private sectors
hair.
to work together
Where they
to
find
deliver
this
the
lady? They
outcomes
rolled
our
her out of the
planet needs.
institute.
Alongside the need for more
She's
development
out the
projects
street.
and
She's
clear
like-
policy frameworks, one of the biggest challenges
Look like
facing
a
the public
fucking-
and private sector is
Like a
increasing
brainwashed
flow
person
of
out of a
private
cult.
capital
This is what they
into
walk out
low
looking
carbon
like and shit,
investments
wearing
in
and
emerging
looking.
economies. This was one of the key
just
challenges
found her and
identified
shit in a
by the
cave.
Climate Finance Leadership Initiative. Analysis in its report last year showed that two-thirds
But like
of
her
emerging
voice.
markets failed to record more than $100 million of investment in clean energy assets each year. This is
Is she
equivalent
speaking the
of
words,
the
or is it
finance
just she
needed
just lip
for
syncing
just
it anyways?
one large-scale solar or wind project. And to close this investment gap, we in financial services
She's
have an
really good at lip
obligation to be
syncing.
clear on our requirements and to work constructively with emerging market governments to create the required conditions. This was the intent behind the CFLI's investment readiness guidelines.
She's not breathing.
We address our most fundamental challenges, and Macquarie is one of the many companies introducing capital to opportunities, and we are also a well-capitalised business ourselves. Shareholders have entrusted us to put capital to work in developing projects and in meeting community needs. We also have our largest ever pool of dry
notice
powder
she's
equity
blinking
under
or not.
management in our funds. It's mobile capital, and we're only stewards of it, working on behalf of fund investors and shareholders, many of whom are ultimately pensioners and insurance holders
she
who
almost
rightly have expectations
doesn't
about
blink
what
fully.
we do with it
You
in
can see
terms of
some in
their
her eye
need
right
for
there.
appropriate risk-adjusted
Her eyes
return,
are trying to
while
change and
also
shit or
delivering
something.
sound social outcomes. So while we have a need and desire to deploy ever larger sums in energy transition and in emerging markets, the capital can only flow to the countries, companies and projects that are investment ready and allow us to manage risks
Her eyes
to an
keep trying to cloud
acceptable
over on the
level
side
for
and shit.
investors.
Good.
So let me give you 3 different examples where we're seeing that happen. And my first is a story about the creative use of limited public capital to mobilise private capital and deliver transformational change
Public
and
capital
build
to
local capability.
deliver private capital.
Here,
Get
the UK
hell out.
government has long been a global leader in climate finance, at home and internationally. And one example of this is a joint venture they've established with our Green Investment Group to challenge
and job opportunity for the community.
for private investment in renewables. And in 2015, Taiwan's electricity mix was 80% coal and gas. In 2017, the Taiwanese government signalled a commitment to increase the volume of electricity supply from renewables from 5% to 25% in 8 years. A target was set to deliver 5.7 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2025 and another 10 gigawatts by 2035. The clear target and associated changes to the regulatory regime gave us the confidence to start developing a three-phase project to construct 2.5 gigawatts. Phase 1, Taiwan's first commercial scale project, is now operational, with Phase 2 in construction. Similarly, positive investment conditions are being created in other countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, and across Latin America. The success of these countries is built on their governments clearly articulating a direction and targets and a well-defined and consistent commercial, regulatory, and legal framework. This incentivizes private investors and legal framework. This incentivizes private investors
group of demons.
Journey to create global standards that enable investing in EM.
I think one of the difficulties that we've all got at the moment is, time to provide
today, and as I say, that consultation.
Just a few examples
is going to be very important. We have recently published a green and sustainable product framework that links financial products to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And to offer a couple of examples of things that we're doing, we launched last year a sustainable deposit where the assets financed by the money coming into that deposit are very, very closely linked, demonstrably so, with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We open up this possibility first to corporates.
With clients. And
I think this is definitely a journey that we're all on together, emerging.
Too much, I can't take it. To fall asleep on them boys.
As a simple writer of cheerful romantic films, it's a very familiar feeling for me to be the least intelligent person in the Zoom. I do feel like I found myself, fat as I am and with no extra training, on the starting block of the 100 meters final at the Finance Olympics. I'm lining up against 7 Usain Bolts, including Mark Carney, Bill Gates, and Rishi Sunak. But
what we have to do right now, every year the world emits roughly 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases. We need to get that to zero in the next few decades. That'll take many new technologies, new policies, and new markets for low carbon solutions. None of it will be easy. Greenhouse gases are a byproduct
a skinless cat died and crawled in a shirt.
Economy. The electricity that powers our lives, the transportation that gets us from place to place, the food we eat, the buildings we live in,
we already had that shit before you came
on every day. They are
controlling shit
in almost every physical process. We'll have to tackle them all to get to zero. There is good news that many people around the world see the urgency of the crisis and understand the need to act quickly. It's been especially great to see this momentum in the financial services sector over the last 5 years. As more and more companies think about climate impacts and work to decarbonize their business models, we'll push closer and closer to that zero emissions goals. Companies, investors, and shareholders can play a pivotal role in this transition by mobilizing capital toward the technologies and businesses we need to build the net zero future. A key is whether clean finance is actually at a lower rate than normal finance, and making sure that we're only assigning credit when it's done in a special way, taking unique risk, including backing innovations. We need to finance the transition, but bringing down the cost of that is where we should assign credit. We also need to invent and deploy
take down your costs by giving people credit instead of real money.
Key
That's what it sounds like to me.
For example, making fuels without carbon for heavy transport, making steel without carbon, making cement without carbon, and finally, carbon removal technology so that we can offset any of the emissions that innovation doesn't get rid of. This all will be very difficult. If we look back at the journey of successful climate technologies like wind power, solar electric, we see that it took decades to get to the point where the costs were the same as the previous approach. And so you had to get scale that was subsidized to get that learning curve going. Now, we can't wait decades for all of these inventions. We need to accelerate the innovation cycle. So we need to invest now, even in technologies that still have a premium price, and get volume so that with scale, that premium price comes down. We need a creative approach to this, including new metrics and new public-private partnerships to catalyze these volumes that will get us the same reduction in cost that we've seen with other technologies. Investors who are willing to
motherfuckers just can't say something straight. They gotta fucking
offset money,
lie, twist their words to fucking tell you're fucking like, okay.
We need leading companies
to make procurement of that bullshit.
That provide sources of revenue for these low carbon products, even when they come at an extra cost, which we call the green premium. So it means taking on risk. It means funding, procurement, even at the early stage of technologies.
I just like being on TV.
Those who take these steps now will not only help the world avoid a climate disaster, they'll position themselves for success in this new world. They'll be the best equipped to finance, produce, and buy the clean solutions that will underpin our future economy. Obviously, that's a lot to do across many different sectors. That's one reason why I'm putting even more of my time into supporting these innovation bootstraps to make the climate transition. I launched Breakthrough Energy in 2015 to help encourage the private sector to be more ambitious about tackling climate change.
Yeah, just showing the
one effort was the creation of a venture capital group called Breakthrough Energy Ventures that did a first $1 billion fund, is now doing a second fund, and it's building a network of investment vehicles and advocacy approaches to smooth the path to get to that net zero by 2050. We have a long road ahead of us, but I'm confident if we work together to support innovation, we will get this done.
I'm trying to watch these demons in here.
Thank you.
Make a demon smile. Yeah, you got it. Oh, go back. Demon smile.
Work together to support innovation, we will get this done.
Demon, look at this. But what is he doing? Old fucking turtle thing. They test you? They did the things on himself, probably. You take the vaccine first. He's a little number one. Take them all first. Every one of them, you get them up your butt.
So let's go to work.
Demon, I speak.
Thank you.
Demon does. Let's go to work. Oh yeah, let's go to work, you bastard. Take everybody's jobs and then say, let's go to work. I'm fucking douchebag. No, this guy over here too.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Business.
Shaping policy.
Great ass demon.
So this is a car.
From Sean there, but be very interested. Don't forget.
Eyes look like holograms.
Find what it
project.
IOSCO in a recent response to an our peers, which
the growing pipe
economic system. As we move to a sustainable economy, all companies, banks, and investors will need to understand where they are vulnerable.
There's the physical risks. What will flooding, wildfires, and many other major events mean for the portfolios of banks? There's the reputational risk of not being seen to act on climate change or financing things that are creating other environmental or social consequences.
As companies adapt to meet net zero targets, they will also face transitional risks.
If we continue to downplay the scale of the transition across all economies around the world, then the adjustment when it comes will be much more severe. The biggest risk is inaction today.
The finance system has the ability to dial up the positive and drastically dial down the negative impacts of every decision made.
ESG, or environmental, social and governance reporting, should be the bare minimum for all companies.
ESG is great, but it's quite narrowly conceived at the moment.
We need to go much further.
What we need is for financial institutions to demonstrate and report on how they are reducing their impact on the natural world.
Those responsible companies that start accurately
grab over 10% of the 1.4 trillion meat market.
Taking society and the environment into account in all our actions will soon be business critical. Fortunately for the finance sector, the opportunities and benefits to society are endless. We need to build a finance system which is recalibrated to the long term. One that is transparent, so all investors can see what their money is funding. And one that takes climate, nature, and social development into account in all financial decisions.
The finance sector plays a crucial role in the fight against climate change, but it cannot do it alone. We need a coordinated response across many sectors: government, energy, technology, the legislative and regulatory environment, bringing all these together to make a meaningful impact.
The thing that gives me hope is that people are rethinking how capitalism should be structured at the top table. It's huge. And if they're successful, then we will live in a much more sustainable future. If they do not succeed, then the economies will collapse and civilization itself is at risk.
As we navigate our way through the biggest economic crisis since the Second World War, the existential threats from climate change and nature loss are still looming. Now is the moment to reframe our idea of value and build a new system. One that will safeguard ourselves from future global shocks. If we do this, we'll be leaving a legacy of which we can feel justly proud.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be in the...
Where did your page go? There we go. Including the LGBTI populations in the response of the COVID. What does any of that have to do with COVID anyways? That's the one I was watching yesterday.
Is unfolding across parts of the world, and that's focusing minds even more acutely on the urgency of delivering a viable vaccine, once approved, of course. Now, hundreds of candidates, 10 are in phase 3 trials right at the moment, and it's a frantic scramble that's exposed the best and the worst in COVID-19, and the desire for vaccine access has laid bare nationalistic tendencies and brutally exposed the inequity underpinning access to health. Also, serious and legitimate questions are being raised over whether some nations are disregarding safety standards in a bid to be the first to develop the jab. Yet in the midst of all of this, we are reminded of the selfless excellence of our scientists and burgeoning solidarity shown by some who remind us we are in the same boat, rich and poor. And for this to work, we all need protection. Well, the COVAX initiative is a shining example of that. We've got so much to discuss, so little time. So let's get going, and please do get involved using the hashtag solutions, the pitfalls facing the world as it tries to meet the challenges of making a vaccine globally available. And joining us this evening, we have Richard Hatchett. Now, he's Chief Executive Officer and Chief London evidence projects are also an essential issue that will be
all their fucking
because 20 years ago Gavi was created in the first place. What progress we are making in participation for our social
stuck into our discussion. We're absolutely privileged to be joined by Professor Klaus Schwab. He's the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. He's going to be making some.
We had demon here. We need privilege.
Thank you very much, Isabel. This session deploying a COVID-19 vaccine is actually part of our social development impact summit, which started 4 days ago, and we are at the end. And I have to tell you, in the 60 sessions which we had over the last days, with great public participation, the issue of COVID-19 vaccines, I think it came up practically in every session, because many of the issues we discussed are dependent on what progress we are making in the development and deployment of the vaccine.
Progress, or you
so I'm looking very much forward to this fantastic panel where we have all aspects integrated. I just would add one personal note. I'm so happy to see this, because 20 years ago, Gavi was created, and the first place was Davos, and in a similar way, Richard place was Davos, and in a similar way, Richard 3 years ago, CEPI was also had as a first place Davos. And I think your two organizations have done a fantastic job in advancing the notion of, let's say, importance, but also practical action around the vaccine.
Dance around with the words. Say the shit they mean. They fucking dance around. So
Thank you very much, Professor Klaus Schwab. As you said, really what is needed. And on that issue, I'd like to bring in Seth immediately, because the countries representing 2/3 of the world's population have now signed up to COVAX. Now, there are obviously more countries are in the pipeline to join, but can you tell us what the next steps are for COVAX? And for those joining us, explain to us briefly, if you can, the importance of this COVAX facility.
Well, of course, thank you, and thank you, Klaus, for those comments about our birthday and CEPI's birthday that we celebrated earlier these years. You know, the critical issue here is a vaccine is the way we're going to get out of this pandemic. Of course, there are many other interventions that are critical, but that is the best way we have to go back towards normal. And science has done an incredible job. You went through the statistics, and normally it's 7 to 10 years to make a vaccine. We're within 1 year still. We're now 9.5 months into it, and we have all of these vaccines and efficacy trials. The challenge is, should those go to a few countries who are able to pay and get high coverage, leaving the rest of the countries with no vaccine, or should we have a distribution across the world? And of course, from our belief in a fast-moving pandemic, you're not safe unless everybody's safe. So what the COVAX facility is trying to do is to get vaccine out to all countries, rich and poor, at the same time. Initially, small amounts of doses to protect healthcare workers and those most at risk, but of course, eventually the broader sets of the population that are going to need access. And to do that, we have to work with the pharmaceutical industry to have them scale up, and we're looking to try to have 2 billion doses by the end of 2021, which would be an extraordinarily never before done. And lastly, of course, is going to be the challenges in delivering
fucking random fucking quick.
Okay, so it is an absolutely humongous task, let's say, Seth. But if I could bring Richard on board now. Richard, what do you see as the main challenges as you push ahead with COVAX? Is it purely financial, or do we veer into the political as well?
Well, there are a number of challenges. The political challenges are, of course, everyone is aware of them. What we have seen are countries that really, until COVAX was created, and they didn't have an option to work together to solve the pandemic, at least where vaccines were concerned, and so the countries were behaving in their own rational self-interest. But as Seth was describing, that was going to result in misallocation of vaccine and concentration of vaccine in a few rich nations, leaving the vast majority of countries without access to vaccine at all. That would have been a tremendous problem. It would have been inequitable, and it would have resulted in the perpetuation of the pandemic. The challenges that COVAX has faced are that we have had to devise the institutional arrangements in real time to develop and create a place and a space for international collaboration in the development, procurement, and delivery of vaccines. Each one of those elements is a very hard challenge in and of itself. Designing a system that can solve all of those elements at the same time, a tremendous challenge. But I think what's encouraging is the emerging momentum around global solidarity, global collaboration to meet these challenges, and a willingness actually to work with us as we have designed the COVAX facility and accept that not all questions are answered at this time, but if we work together in a collaborative and transparent spirit, we'll make progress and move forward.
Absolutely. And just a very quick question there, Richard, because you talk about this multi-layered approach that's having to kind of draw together at the same time. Just how many people are working on COVAX just to try and get this vaccine, once it's approved, distributed in an equitable way?
Well, it certainly depends on how you count people. I think, Seth, our latest numbers are up to 167 countries that have 157 countries, that are collaborating together. So within those countries, you probably have hundreds of people that have been working on it. Within Gavi and CEPI and WHO and our partner organizations and our industry partners, I would say thousands of people working together to bring this to fruition.
It's a phenomenal project and a phenomenal effort. Now, Julie, could you just come in here and just tell us about what's in the pipeline at Merck? Because you're also developing vaccines and treatments against COVID-19.
Only a few thousand people getting this shit popping? That makes sense, only 1%.
I'd like to just start by acknowledging that in just the first 6 months of this pandemic, more than 700 products for either treatment or prevention of SARS-CoV-2 went into pipelines at various stages. This is absolutely unprecedented in the history. Went into pipelines for either treatment. I'd like to just start by acknowledging that in just the first 6 months of this pandemic, more than 700 products for either treatment or prevention of SARS-CoV.
700 products in 6 months. 700. That's like making 700 different Toyota Camrys. There's 700 styles. What the fuck is that? That don't even make sense. 700 different vaccines? Which one you get? You got a flavor you pick with. What the hell? That don't even make sense.
In just the first 6 months of this pandemic, more than 700 products for either treatment or prevention of SARS-CoV-2 went into pipelines at various stages. This is absolutely unprecedented in the history of the world. Just think of the AIDS epidemic, where it was several years before we even had a test, and it took 15 years to get highly active antiviral therapy. So we're living in an era where the science has brought possibilities. At MSD, we are prosecuting 2 vaccines that we hope will be relevant. We have kind of the mind that it's not likely that a single vaccine is going to solve the world's problems, because there are different populations and different requirements, both in the early phases as well as potentially for a more sustained engagement in coronavirus prevention. But I also want to mention antivirals, because of course, if we could take the mortality of this disease down quickly, it buys us a lot of time to really get to that global overall prevention platform that we're looking for. So MSD is working on an oral antiviral that we're hoping will be relevant, and others are working on modalities including antibodies and other small molecule approaches. So I don't think we should put all of our eggs in the vaccine basket, but clearly it's a huge component of really securing global protection, and we have to prioritize it. And I just want to thank Richard and Seth for their leadership of the COVAX effort. It's just game-changing.
That is an absolute perfect segue. Thank you very much, Judy, because I'd just like to bring in Sai. And my question is for you. In terms of developing countries, now, is COVAX going to be that game changer? Is everything in line now as you see it to be able to provide that change that needs to be unfurled in the developing world quickly and effectively?
COVAX facility.
Thank you, Isabel. I think COVAX is that game changer because, if you look at the history of vaccines and if you look at this response by the global community to COVID-19, it's extremely important how we react to this, and COVAX is right in the epicenter of that reaction. And
Hey Google, what are the COVAX stock prices today?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Hey Google, what are the COVAX stock prices trending at?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Hey Google, what is COVAX?
According to Wikipedia, the name means blacksmith in Hungarian, and it is a loanword from Slavic languages. There are 221,688 people in Hungary who are named Kovács, making the name the second most common family name among Hungarians.
Not hearing the X. Hey Google, what is COVAX?
According to Wikipedia, the name means blacksmith in Hungarian, and it is a loanword
from
Slavic
languages.
You, Google. There are 221,688 people in Hungary who are named Kovács, making the name the second most common family name among Hungarians.
I don't even want to ask again. Hit the bro, just try to lie. Wait, let's see.
Extremely important part of this response to COVID-19, not just in high-income countries, middle-income countries, but also in low-income countries. And where this is bringing to bear is that we are at the beginning of the beginning. As you know, vaccine development takes decades. We are just at the end of the first year, and we have a few candidates that are moving forward. None of them are successful yet. Time will tell. The next 3 to 4 months are very crucial as to which one of these candidates will be successful. But I would say that's the end of the beginning, I would say, because once you know what is successful, then you need to manufacture that at scale. Some manufacturers are already working on manufacturing these vaccines at scale. Some of us can maybe make it in the tens of millions of doses. Others could maybe make it in the hundreds of millions of doses. That remains to be seen. But the devil is in the details, I would say. The next steps after you manufacture, you need to get these products approved by international regulatory agencies, US, Europe, the WHO for pre-qualification, many low-income country and middle-income country NRAs, and then you need to distribute it. Because many of us, Gavi, many of us are used to manufacturing and distributing vaccines for routine immunization, which is for childhood immunization, which is a subset of the population that we are targeting. And so now we are in the gamut of delivering these vaccines to pretty much all populations or the high-risk populations at first. So that is something that we have not done before at the kind of scale that we are talking about. I think that needs a deeper discussion. There has been a significant discussion on R&D, innovation, product development, clinical trials, and manufacturing scale-up. But we also need to talk about distribution and getting it to the populations that need it most. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sai. So that's definitely something we'll be bringing up. But before we go any further, I'd really like to bring in Heidi, who has joined us. And Heidi, one of the issues that is going to be holding people back from taking a vaccine are just a whole load of concerns that can't be really just pinpointed and put into one category. And I was just reading some research in the UK that a lot of people won't even have a vaccine, even if it is available. Now, I know that you've looked into the issues of rumors, etc., that stop people getting vaccinated. But if you could just outline for us, what are the main reasons why people will just not go and get this inoculation, even though the government advice is to go and do so?
Well, there's a real mix of reasons, and some of it is frankly quite understandable. This is it's a brand new virus, and there's a lot of uncertainty around that itself. And if people aren't even believing that that's a real virus, why would you be caring about a vaccine? And the other part of it is that the information is uncertain. So we have to have a little bit of empathy with the people who say, I'm not sure. I think a lot of the surveys have put into their headlines overstated refusals because they lump together those who really say, I would not take it, to those who say, I'm not sure, when in fact it's pretty reasonable to not be sure in the current environment.
Sure
it's highly varied by country. What concerns me is that some of the countries that are starting to say they are not going to take it more, we've seen Nigeria, Pakistan, DRC was the least willing, and the knock-on effect it's having on some of the overall vaccine confidence. So I think that the good news is we have time. I'm just finishing 5 years of working on trust building and rumor management around Ebola vaccine trials in multiple African countries. The thing that was an absolute asset was having time to start to build that. I think we can get in there and start communicating, engaging around some basic vaccines. We've lost so much time on really childhood vaccines, the flu vaccines.
People do turn into zombies and shit.
I just got data back from our EU study. 15% increase in willingness and confidence in the flu vaccine. We're seeing, other confidence rising around pneumonia vaccine. Let's encourage that, people around things they know, they're familiar with, and in that interaction, start having a conversation about COVID.
They got it up 7% from what it is.
We have time. We can change the grounds.
You got 50% confident in a flu vaccine. That's only 43%.
Isn't one of the major concerns when it comes to the pickup of this vaccine is, as everyone has brought up, is the phenomenal speed the vaccine will inevitably be brought online, and that has sparked a lot of concerns in people. So Judy, you who are involved in this, what could you do to reassure people that really safety checks, most countries are not going to neglect safety checks?
I'm right. Hey Google, how effective is the flu vaccine?
According to Wikipedia, a February 2019 CDC interim report estimated the vaccine effectiveness to be approximately 47% against the 2018-2019 flu strains.
So that's close. 47. So 50%, that lady said they got on 50%.
Let's encourage that, people around things they know, they're familiar with, and in that interaction, start having a conversation about COVID. I think in countries and rumor management, and so, but to their headlines, and it's a brand new virus. Environment. So, what concerns the least and rumor management and start change the ground.
Concerns in people. So Judy,
vaccine manufacturers signed a vaccine population protection that safety shortcuts will occur, and that is not the case. In fact, the major vaccine manufacturers signed a
so it says the flu vaccine is 47% effective, and they got 50% people to believe in it. So if you believe in it, basically you might have that. That don't even make no damn sense. It's less than the belief.
Vaccine pledge just very recently promising that they would adhere to the safety requirements of the regulatory agents and not jump ahead of the curve in an effort to so-called win the race or get a product out there as quickly as the efficacy would allow. So I think we ourselves are self-policing and making sure that we don't overstep that confidence barrier. But there are a lot of other things that need to be done. And Heidi, thank you for bringing up the Ebola virus situation, because as MSD developed our now licensed Ebola vaccine and utilized it both in West Africa and the DRC, we learned so much ground truth about what happens in cultures that aren't used to investigational products or aren't used to new launches, and how much community engagement and local leadership really matters. But I think the opposite end of the spectrum is also true. We need to involve the really important opinion leaders, the trusted and credible doctors at the local level, as well as scientists more broadly.
The trusted doctors? What does that mean? The ones they have in their pocket? The ones they own? What does that mean? All the doctors aren't trusted? Usually, what are the untrusted doctors? These people just make it their life to control shit. It's kind of weird. It's like they fucking study and control and get people into place and then test us. Testing y'all motherfuckers out.
To first of all, be informed of the actual facts, not the mythology or the political interpretation of those facts, and then really stand strong, honestly and transparently explaining what we know, what we don't know, and what we're doing to try to assess the safety of these new products. Trust is everything.
Trust is everything. And Seth, I would just like to bring some of the issues that Heidi was also bringing up about that the vaccine reticence in countries like Nigeria, like the DRC. When you want to distribute the vaccine or new COVID vaccine in an equitable way, this is going to prove a real challenge for you, is it not? How are you going to prioritize distribution in countries, and how can you try and convince those populations that it is absolutely necessary for them that frontline workers are actually vaccinated?
Well, of course, we have a great panel here, each of whom are working on these topics. And I want to start by building on what Julie said, because, you know, with the Ebola vaccine, this was done at minus 80 degrees delivery in a war-torn area. And it was a vaccine that wasn't licensed initially. And they were able to, under a clinical trial protocol, roll it out, collect more information on safety, under informed consent, and get it out. But it took this intense engagement with the community. And the only reason I wanted to mention all that is it is possible to do it even under the most difficult situations, but one has to plan for that. So I think if we look at what's happened, you know, 20, 30 years ago, vaccine coverage was low. Today, it is quite high. It's the most widely distributed health intervention in the world. And we've introduced 490
health intervention. Hey, Google. What is a health intervention?
According to Wikipedia, a public health intervention is any effort or policy that attempts to improve mental and physical health on a population level. Public health interventions may be run by a variety of organizations, including governmental health departments and non-governmental organizations.
new vaccines. Sai is right, most of those are pediatric vaccines, but we've also had vaccines for epidemic diseases, population-based, things like yellow fever, things like meningitis, and we've been able to do that. The way to do that, as Heidi has said so clearly, is engagement with the community, is having trusted spokespeople, is making sure there are facts available, but facts alone don't make this happen. What we really need is to also move with people's hearts, and that trust issue is absolutely critical. So it is doable, but it requires attention. The last thing I'll say is that, the Alliance, it's not just the Gavi Secretariat, WHO, UNICEF, the World Bank, the CDC, all of these partners are going to work together with countries to help. And that work has already started. Toolkits have been built to help countries begin to plan for these vaccine rollouts and to understand what's going to be needed.
I'd like to bring Richard in here. Now, we are receiving questions on Slido, and I've received this question, which is, what is needed, and it was something that Sai evoked, to establish a global mechanism under leadership of the WHO and Gavi to ensure an equitable and criteria that's based on the distribution of the new vaccine. So I guess the question is, how do you actually establish such an intricate and complex global mechanism to distribute this vaccine? And if that work is obviously underway already, what has been established so far?
Yeah.
Well, I think there are two pieces to the answer to the question. One is the logistics, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. The second, and I think the more in piece, and the piece that will probably, if it works, will be studied for years, is how do you create a system that balances the different incentives of the different stakeholders to work together in a collaborative way. A lot of observers have noted that the scramble for vaccine in many ways, is a real world illustration of a prisoner's dilemma. And we, myself, Seth, Sumi Swaminathan from WHO, Dr. Tedros, and other colleagues have been thinking, very hard about how would you design a system that incentivizes our industry partners to work with us, that incentivizes countries to work together and to collaborate with us, and that brings all of that together.
I seen this with that reporter the other day, how they can't look straight at the camera, because if they look straight at the camera, they misshape their head, is off shape and shit. Look at he got his camera angle he got to stay at and shit. Look down. Otherwise, if he looks straight at the camera, you see the big dome on the back of his head.
In a way that is self-supporting. That's a really interesting problem. The problem of actually then, once that system is constructed and functioning, and vaccine is beginning to be provided into that system, how you actually solve the logistical challenge of having, let us speculate and say we end up with 5 or 6 COVID vaccines that have different characteristics in a complicated global environment where different countries have different regulatory regimes, may have different on-the-ground challenges in terms of delivering certain kinds of vaccines, based on cold chain requirements or other challenges. How do you make all of that system come together so that vaccine is efficiently distributed in a way that also achieves this goal of population equity? That's a huge challenge. To be utterly candid, we are still working through that as we go, and we haven't solved all of the challenges yet, but we are beginning to identify them, and we have partners lined up. And as COVAX has achieved momentum, and even, I would humbly suggest, a sense of inevitability that this is going to be one of the very important mechanisms for delivering vaccine, we have more and more help to solve these practical logistical challenges.
And just very briefly now, how much of a blow is it for COVAX that big players like the China and US aren't on board? And are you any closer to persuading them to join?
That guy spit them bars.
Well, let me answer first, and then Seth can certainly jump in, and I think other colleagues may have valuable opinions to put in. But I mean, I think in many respects, it was not a surprise to us that, in particular, that the United States and China, because of their extensive internal domestic vaccine development efforts and their investments in vaccine development, might feel that they had a sufficient number of candidates that they would be able to account for the needs of their own populations. So may not view COVAX as a necessary delivery mechanism for their domestic needs. But there is also a way that these countries can continue and can still contribute to the global effort that COVAX is trying to lead, and would do so out of enlightened self-interest, because it will help end the pandemic sooner and help them restore their economies. And that's through contributing either funds or doses to support distribution, particularly to developing countries. And of course, they are contributing scientifically. I mean, we are working, some of the COVAX portfolio companies are based in the US, some are based in China, and we continue to have productive dialogues with scientists, in those countries, but also globally. So there are many ways that countries can contribute to the global effort. They don't all necessarily entail, buying doses for domestic use.
I'd like to bring in
Richard,
continue.
Just add to that, Richard, that while the governments may or may not at this point in time be joining the COVAX, in the US, for example, the vaccine inventors are part of the International Federation of Pharmaceutical Manufacturers and Associations, and by virtue of our membership in this international association, we are very much involved in contributing to COVAX. So there are other avenues to bring the science and the inventiveness to be helpful, even if a given country is not actively participating in the procurement efforts.
You got
And then I was
lips
just
too.
actually tacking on from what you were just saying, Sai, as an outside observer, I suppose, when you look at COVAX, do you think there can be a conflict of interest? And I imagine maybe Seth and Richard will have something to say here, but that high-income countries who are developing their own vaccines in this kind of so-called, vaccine nationalism are also part of COVAX. Can the two work together?
I think they can work together, but it's a matter of the kind of product development they do, and it's a matter of kind of the delivery systems and the delivery mechanisms that companies have in mind. Because what may work for, let's say, US or Europe or China may or may not work in middle income and other low income countries. What worked, for example, for Ebola may not work for COVID-19 vaccines. I mean, if a vaccine has to be stored at extremely low temperatures, or if it has to be, for example, say lyophilized and to be having an diluent to be carried along with it, then all of this adds to the burden of distribution, administration, biomedical waste disposal, all aspects of vaccines and vaccinations. And that WHO and UNICEF and Gavi and PAHO know very well about this. And it's not just the fact of making a vaccine, but you need to transport it with care. It has to be delivered with care. The biomedical waste has to be disposed. So there are many, many, many aspects of this. A simple concept of a vaccine vial monitor that is really required by WHO, that is an important marker of vaccine safety and quality at the point of use, is very important. If a company is not able to put that onto a vaccine, then it poses difficulties down the distribution chain.
So just a very, very quick, simple question here, but I've just been seeing that Johnson & Johnson is developing a single-dose vaccine. Now, surely in terms of distribution and getting this out across developing countries, that's a development to be welcomed, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything that's a single dose, anything that is stable at, I would say, either at, at room temperature, not at room temperature, but at least at 5 degrees, or there is also extensive experience in shipping vaccines at -20, because the oral polio vaccine is stored at -20 and it's shipped around the world. There are many companies still that have -20 cold chains, so that can be leveraged. So I think companies also have to look at what are the issues of the developing world during product development. I think after licensure, it might be a bit too late because you are already committed to your product development and manufacturing and formulation schemes. I think you need to look at it right during the product development, and that's what I think many companies are doing around the world. But if they only have a US or a European focus, they may not see the requirement of what is needed in middle income and low income countries. And I think COVAX, will bring that out. I think WHO's target product profile has already brought that out. I think companies have to look at that and cater to those requirements.
Okay, Heidi, I just have a question for you that we have received on Slido. And it's about this question of trust that we were talking about. And this is a question, I think it comes from Politico Europe, and it says, do you think there needs to be more transparency on the deals between countries and drug makers so that it can be more easily scrutinized? Now, is there an opacity there already in the first place? And do you think, especially the drugs that need to deal with COVID, that there does really need to be more transparency given the speed that this whole vaccination and drugs are going online?
Well, I totally agree with the trust issue and overall transparency. I often say we don't really have a misinformation problem as much as a relationship problem between publics and industry and science. And but I don't think that, I mean, I think that's been actually quite a bit of exposure about the different negotiations going on. I think actually where some of the transparency is really going to need to happen is in deciding who gets it first, because I think that and what are the criteria, and not just announcing things at different times, but I think anyway in any part of this the multi phase processes we have to go through, as Richard outlined very clearly in the beginning, throughout all of them, the more that we can be transparent and sharing without, I mean, we don't want to create another infodemic. I mean, infodemic is not just bad news, it's just an overload of information. So
infodemic, I never heard that. Hey Google, what is an infodemic?
On the website nedir.com, they say, Ism olarak kolonel dejinde, bilgi, haber, onlamina gelmektedir.
The fuck? Hey Google, what is an infodemic?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, what is an infodemic?
On the website originalInfidelsMC.com, they say, Infidels Motorcycle Club is a veteran-formed and based MC for patriotic Americans and our supporting allies. Definition of an infidel: one who doubts or rejects a particular doctrine, system, or principle.
Hey Google, what's an infodemic?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that, but I found something similar. Do you want to know what exactly lymphoma is?
No. Hey Google, infodemic.
On the website nedir.com, they say, İngilizce bir kalim olan info, Türkçe, ism olarak kolonel dejinde, bilgi, haber, onlamina gelmektedir.
I mean, not just without, I mean, we don't want to create another infodemic. I mean, infodemic is not just bad news, it's just an overload of information. So,
hey Google, what's an infodemic?
Nympho is used as a noun as an informal and derogatory term to mean a woman with very strong sexual desires. Do you want to hear how nympho is spelled?
No. Hey Google,
According to Mayo Clinic, hypersexuality, an obsession with sexual thoughts, urges, or behaviors that may cause distress or that negatively affects health, job, or relationships.
Hey Google, infodemic.
On the website nedir.com, they say, İngilizce bir kalim olan info, Türkçe, ism olarak kolonel dejinde, bilgi, haber, onlamina gelmektedir.
Wait a second, let me try to record that shit. Hold on. I'll get it back. I'll get you on that one, Google. Speech to text. Hey Google, Infodemic.
On the website netir.com, they say, İngilizce bir kelime olan info, Türkçe, isim olarak kullanıldığında bilgi, haber anlamına gelmektedir.
Okay, I had my phone translate it, and it says, they say English, jailbird, Kalmar, lawn, info, church is a small rock colony. DJ. I messed up. What the hell? Let me go on. That's crazy. Hold on a second. Probably in reverse or something though, huh? What is that? Stupid lady.
Bilgi, haber anlamına gelmektedir.
Okay, I had my...
They say, İngilizce bir kelime olan info, Türkçe, isim olarak kullanıldığında bilgi, haber anlamına gelmektedir. They say, İngilizce bir kelime olan info, Türkçe, isim olarak kullanıldığında bilgi, haber anlamına gelmektedir.
Let me go back. Wait a second.
They say,
Hey Google.
İngilizce bir kelime olan info, Türkçe, isim olarak kullanıldığında bilgi, haber anlamına gelmektedir.
You don't want to answer yourself? Hey Google.
They say, İngilizce bir kelime olan info, Türkçe, isim olarak kullanıldığında bilgi, haber anlamına gelmektedir.
They don't do nothing to say. That's weird. Get back to this. Using their devices against them.
I mean, you're not just with them. The more that we can be transparent and sharing without, I mean, we don't want to create another infodemic. I mean, infodemic is not just bad news. It's just an overload of information. So, I mean, you have to find a fine line between being transparent when it's appropriate and when it resonates, because you don't want to also contribute to this sea of different stages of information by putting out pieces of it. At the same time, you don't want to wait until the 11th hour. So it's not easy, but I would just encourage transparency. But one of the things that's also frustrating the public is that, you know, the rules keep changing. And there seems to be conflicting guidance, and so you don't want to keep putting things out and then changing them all the time. So it's finding a balance, I think.
Finding a balance. Now, I'd like to bring up something that you've just brought up and put it to Seth, actually, because Seth, I know that COVAX has actually already decided in some respects who does get a vaccine first. What have you put into place there, and who will be your priorities, and how will you implement that fast? What is going to be the rate at which these vaccines will be deployed?
Of course, WHO provides normative guidance for most countries, and they will continue to suggest, and particularly as we learn more about the virus, what the risk groups might be. WHO provides normative guidance from...
Hey Google, what is normative guidance?
According to Wikipedia, in philosophy, normative statements make claims about how things should or ought to be, how to value them, which things are good or bad, and which actions are right or wrong.
So the NWO, or Indo, whatever they said, tells them what's good or bad.
Be deployed.
Of course, WHO provides normative guidance for most countries, and they will continue to suggest, and particularly as we learn more about the virus, what the risk groups might be in different situations. But where we started was frontline health workers, because unlike in the West, where you have a fair number of them, but we've seen what happens when they get sick or they have to go into quarantine, how that can, increase the overwhelming of the health system in developing countries. And we saw this in the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Countries were devastated because there's so few health workers. So one of the questions was, could we get vaccine out to all those frontline health workers across the world? And that's a relatively small number comparatively. We think kind of a maximum number of 3%, and then from there to go into higher risk populations. Now, the question we got asked early on is that realistic? Are people going to follow guidelines? It'll be up to individual countries, of course, but what I think we learned from the Ebola situation, we might have thought also in DRC that, it would have just gone to rich people and people wouldn't have gotten it, but actually there was pretty good attendance to having those vaccines used for the people who really needed it and to be able to help control the epidemic and for health workers. And so, I think we learn from the experience, and it's going to be important to make sure everybody understands why, but that's how we'll follow it. The last thing I'd say is, the reason we need a bespoke plan for every country is in the US, for example, it might be prisons or meatpacking plants or other, situations, obviously the elderly, and bespoke plan for every, that's how we'll follow it. The last thing I'd say is the reason we need a bespoke plan for...
Hey Google, what's a bespoke plan?
On the website homeforallsmc.org, they say, specific plans are planning documents that guide the development of a particular geographic area within a city or county.
Local plans for fucking to the ground. That's down to the ground level. We're getting there.
Every country is in the US, for example, it might be prisons or meatpacking plants or other, situations, obviously the elderly and risk groups. In developing countries, you may not have a very large elderly population, but you may have urban slums or displaced people or refugees. And so that's why we really have to understand the local situation, even though we can have global guidelines.
It's absolutely fascinating. Sadly, we really don't have much time left. So I'd like to ask you all...
Hey Google, what's the global guidelines for the coronavirus vaccine?
I'm not sure, but I found something for. What are the vaccine recommendations during the COVID-19 pandemic? Would that help?
Sure.
On the website cdc.gov, they say, routine vaccination is an essential preventive care service for children, adolescents, and adults that should not be delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In light of COVID-19 related reductions in people accessing vaccination services, it is important to assess the vaccination status of all patients at each visit to avoid missed opportunities for vaccination and ensure timely vaccine catch-up.
Question, because we've all evoked Ebola this evening, and so there's been a number of epidemics, pandemics, this obviously the most serious, but if we draw upon what's been learned, do you think we're any more prepared as a result of this, given that we're warned by the WHO and other organizations that this could become the new normal? What lessons have been learned from this that can be used to be drawn upon in the future to make an actions against any future pandemic or epidemic more efficacious and faster. How about starting with you, Julie?
If we haven't learned our lesson this time, I don't think we're ever going to. I've been watching this from AIDS to don't think we're ever going to. Haven't learned our lesson this time. I don't think we're ever going to. I've been watching this from AIDS to SARS to I've been watching this from AIDS to SARS to monkey. I've been watching this from AIDS to SARS to. I've been watching this from AIDS to SARS to monkeypox, the pandemic in 2009, and feeding forward. Each time we have a new challenge, we promise to do certain things, and we do bring our level of preparedness up a notch or two. But that sustained commitment to truly creating global health security, we have not tipped. And I pray and am personally doing everything I can in my network, but also in my role as the co-chair of the Commission on Global Health Security, to really try to make sure that while we're fighting this pandemic, we're preparing for the next. Because I do believe it's only a matter of time before we face another one of these situations, or potentially something even worse. So now is the time to prepare.
Now is the time to prepare. Heidi, I'm just wondering, given these issues of vaccine nationalism, we've seen it in Europe, borders went up as soon as COVID-19 struck. We've seen countries develop and buy up billions of doses of vaccine. Do you think there is the beginnings of an understanding, particularly if you look in Europe, that there has to be more unity when it comes to health? We hear about a European Health Union and the burgeoning European Health Union, possibly. Do you think that that might catch on, or do you think we're possibly going the other way?
Well, I think it's all about bad timing, because
Could the vaccines, they put them out, they make you want them. Just like the PS5s. Everybody wants the PS5s. They can't get them. The scalpers are selling them for way more. That's what the people who are going to buy the vaccines and sell them for more. And all the people, greedy ass people, going to buy them up. Nah, to be there down, damn.
COVID happened to land in a most hyper-polarized political landscape that we've had in a long time. We're in an era of anti-globalization. It just fits right into all the current environment. I think, if we can get the underlying ferment to, and we could be able to switch our gears and be less polarized. I mean, the challenge with epidemics in general is, what else is going on, and what's gonna, in DRC, COVID landed in the middle of the Ebola trials. In another country, there was an earthquake while there was they're running to work on COVID. So in the politics of it all is, historically, vaccines were just the epitome of health diplomacy. It was used to stop, people fighting in wars. They would put their guns down for a few days so that people could be vaccinated.
What?
I think there are some new innovations.
Put my gun down. I gotta go get vaccinated.
Certainly trust building efforts. I think that what I've seen in the positive
Before
sense
I shoot you got your vaccine, right?
Community volunteerism.
I can't shoot you. You got your vaccine.
Dissent, but,
vaccine.
there have been people who've been incredibly resourceful, innovative. I'm sure many of us know our neighborhood much better than we did before COVID. There are, and that's I think even locally, to start there. I remember, working on some of the same epidemics that Julie talks about, and not just natural epidemics, but the 911. But have you stocked your fridge? Do you have water? You have some really basic things. But I think we will not forget. The world will not. There will be the pre-COVID and post-COVID world. We should remind ourselves that the reason we have CEPI is because of Ebola. And I remind people about that. There's And ourselves that the reason we have CEPI is because of Ebola.
Hey Google, what's CEPI?
According to Wikipedia, CEPI, from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, CEPI can be either an Italian family name or an affectionate abbreviation for the name Joseph or Joseph, commonly used in Swiss German.
We should remind ourselves that the reason we have CEPI is because of Ebola. And, you know, I remind people about that. There's so much anxiety about fast, but I said, well, you know what? Are we talking about why it's faster? Because we did learn things from Ebola. And I think one of the things moving forward on this is trust. I mean, the importance of trust. And I think the bigger answer has to do with current politics that are a bit bigger than the unfortunately undermining some of the situation right now.
Certainly a very big question, will be the subject of another whole session. We're getting very low on time, unfortunately, but Seth, I'd like to bring you in. Do you think we're gonna come out of this any wiser in terms of how to deal with pandemics? Do we learn every time something new? Will we be able to act faster and more efficiently?
So three quick answers. So first of all, it is evolutionarily certain we will have more outbreaks. So I agree with Julie. Second, the way to build better is to build routine systems. And that's why having a strong routine health system, that a resilient health system, having delivery for vaccines, those types of things are really important. The last thing, though, is to have continued investment. And
do we learn every time something new? Will we be able to act faster and more efficiently?
So three quick answers. So first of all, it is evolutionarily certain we will have more outbreaks. So I agree with Julie. Second, the way to build better is to build routine systems. And that's why having a strong routine health system, that a resilient health system, having delivery for vaccines, those types of things are really important. The last thing, though, is to have continued investment. And the challenge in the past has been we invest, then we stop because, there's no longer an epidemic. This time, the cost has been somewhere between $9 and $12 trillion. I do hope what Julie said is right, is that people will now say, oh my God, a little bit of investment, a little bit of preparation during peacetime is exactly the right thing to do to make sure that we are prepared. And we can work with the new instruments we built, but we will even need to build new ones, better surveillance systems, better understanding of disease, but we need to fund it in peacetime.
Surveillance systems.
Oh, I am so disappointed. The time has gone so fast, and I haven't even had a chance to speak to Richard or Sai just to get their final thoughts. But the conversation is continuing anyway. But we're going to have to wrap up this session, and I just want to thank you really from the bottom of my heart. I found this absolutely fascinating, and it's been wonderful talking to you. Many thanks, Richard Hatchett, Seth Berkley, Sai Prasad, Julie Geberding, and of course Heidi Larson. Brilliant discussion, of course.
No one got any thoughts on this? Resetting the social construct.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Welcome to this closing plenary of the Jobs Reset Summit, a call to action for resetting the social contract. I'm Sadia Zahidi from the World Economic Forum. Welcome to all of you. You just heard in that video the co-chairs and leaders involved with this summit lay out very precisely the challenges that we're facing, but also the huge opportunity that this crisis offers us to be able to make a change and quite fundamentally reset the social contract. Now, I have the great pleasure of having with us our founder and executive chairman and 4 global shapers that I will introduce shortly. But I did want to thank the many of you that have been involved in these conversations over the last 4 days. We had over 170 leaders and organizations join the conversations. Over 1,000 people that joined our platform through the World Economic Forum. And nearly 500,000 people that watched all of the live stream conversations and millions more that were reached through social media. I think the reason for this strong resonance has been how critical this topic of economic growth and revival,
fix her head a little bit more.
of the jobs reset,
turn it
of education, skills, and lifelong learning, and of equity, inclusion, and social justice is today. I'd also particularly like to thank the 16 co-chairs of the summit that really took on each of the 4 days' themes and drove forward not only the development of the program and the conversations and their networks, but this event is just the start of that conversation. They will be carrying forward a number of these initiatives with us and helping create that better vision and better outcomes for the economy, for jobs, for skills, and for equity. Now for today, we want to try to do something that is an almost impossible task, which is bring home 4 days of conversations and start talking about what might be the highlights, the priorities, and then of course,
3 major takeaways. Thank you very much, Sadia. I have 3 major takeaways. First, the World Economic Forum is now very much engaged into this initiative of shaping a great reset for the post-corona era. And of course, for the post-corona era. And of course, the objective of this reset is to make the world more...
Hey Google, what is the post-corona era?
Sorry, I don't have that information about coronavirus.
Resilient, more sustainable, and also more fair and more inclusive. Now, in order to make the world more fair and inclusive, I think the key word is jobs.
Hey Google, what does inclusive mean?
Inclusive has 3 different meanings. Starting with the most common one, inclusive can be used as an adjective to mean including or covering all the services, facilities, or items normally expected or required. Is that the meaning you were looking for?
No.
Alright, inclusive can also be used as an adjective to mean not excluding any of the parties or groups involved in something. Is that the meaning you were looking for?
No.
Okay, finally, inclusive can be used as an adjective to mean aiming to provide equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as those having physical or mental disabilities or belonging to other minority groups. Do you want to hear inclusive used in a sentence?
Sure.
Here's an example of inclusive being used in a sentence. This is a testament to the inclusive environment fostered at our school. Do you want to hear how inclusive is spelled?
No thanks.
And here I have learned during the summit many aspects of how we should approach, let's say, the creation of skills for tomorrow and so on. But the second for me, major element was we need to address this issue, not just in terms of what policies, what we need, but also in terms of changing our mindset. And here, what is at the forefront is to create a new model, a new concept, a new definition of capitalism. Capitalism in the old definition comprises only financial capital, but actually human and social capital and of course natural capital is as important as...
Hey Google, what is human capital?
According to Wikipedia, human capital is the stock of habits, knowledge, social and personality attributes embodied in the ability to perform labor so as to produce economic value. Human capital is unique and differs from any other capital. It is needed for companies to achieve goals, develop and remain innovative.
Financial capital. And for me, this means to enhance even our steps, our important steps we are undertaking, to have business leaders accepting to report on the ESGs. But one of the highlights for me was the launch of the
Hey Google, what's the ESGs?
According to Wikipedia, environmental, social, and corporate governance refers to the 3 central factors in measuring the sustainability and societal impact of an investment in a company or business. These criteria help to better determine the future financial performance of companies.
Sport for a new economy, because it means that governments should also be measured and judged not only in terms of GDP growth, but on the basis of the 4 Ps, prosperity, people, planet, and principles for good governance. And finally, in all the sessions, that's my third conclusion, practically in every session, it was evident how much public-private cooperation is needed.
Hey Google, explain the 4 Ps.
On the website Investopedia.com, they say, these are the 4 petaseconds: the product, the good or service, the price, what the consumer pays, the place, the location where a product is marketed, and promotion, the advertising.
All those issues cannot be solved by governments, business, or civil society alone. We need collaborative efforts, and I'm very happy that we have 4 global shapers, because it's your world which we are discussing here, and to integrate you into this great reset initiative for global shapers, because I need collaborative efforts.
Hey Google, what's efforts?
Here's the definition of effort: a vigorous or determined attempt.
I don't know what he says. Closed caption that ass. There ain't no caption. Okay, there ain't no captions.
And I'm very happy that we have 4 global shapers, because...
Hey Google, what's global shapers?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that, but I found something related. Do you want to know what global shapers do?
Yeah.
On the website globalshapers.org, they say, a global footprint. Shapers look for opportunities to have impact on a global scale by joining forces with other hubs. They represent a network of peers connected through technology, events, and joint projects.
Okay. I don't know what he's saying on this other word.
Efforts and collaborative efforts. And I'm very happy that we have 4 global shapers, because it's your world which we are discussing here. And to integrate you into this great reset initiative is absolutely essential. Back to you, Sadia.
Thank you very much. Jimmy, Professor Schwab just referred to this idea of broadening out beyond GDP and ensuring that as we head towards an economic revival, we are not relying only on the metrics of the past. Now, I know you were following closely the discussions on day 1 on economic growth, revival, and transformation. Share with us your highlights and your key priorities moving forward.
Thank you, Sadia.
Need sound.
She's still going. No sound, she's still going hard.
Jimmy, hold on for a second. We're just going to try to see if we can ensure your sound is back up.
Look at her lip. I'm just kidding. Those lips.
Okay, we're going to let our tech team work with you on ensuring that your sound is back on. It might be an issue with the headset. Letty, I'm going to move it over to you, because Professor Schwab also mentioned how jobs are basically the red thread that connect these 4 days. And if we have jobs, and if we do have better learning and earning potential for everyone, that could certainly help with some of the social challenges we face today. So let me come over to you, and if you could share with me your highlights and your key priorities from day 2, and then I'm going to come back to you, Jumi.
Thank you so much, Sadia, and thanks everyone for joining.
I think that for me, for day two, it was a big reminder on why it is important to have this conversation around jobs, around work. And I think that I want to bring a couple of ideas. One is that it is incredibly important to talk about work because we spend one third of our adult life working. And this activity is rapidly evolving and has a great impact not only in our own quality of life, also in our communities and our countries. And this activity that we spend a lot of time performing is rapidly evolving. The worlds of work and education are changing faster than ever. And I think that one of my key takeaways from the second day is that there are multiple forces shaping this change. One of them is, of course, technology. When we talk about the evolution of work, the future of work, we tend to think about technology immediately, but there are also other forces. For instance, Linda Granton talked about how life expectancy is growing and how we have many demographic changes that are also changing the nature of work. We talked about climate change and migration as forces that are also shaping the world of work, and the intersection in these two topics, climate refugees that should also have decent and good job opportunities. And finally, COVID as another imminent force that has shaped how we work. My final thought is that this challenge of the fast evolution of work is so big that one actor alone cannot tackle the challenge. We need really to work on multi-stakeholder collaboration between, of course, the private sector, but also companies looking to support their workforces, technology companies that can map potential job transitions, of course, labor unions that are aware of the impact, and community organizations. And in this last part, the Global Shapers community plays a big role. As co-chair of the Education and Employment Steering Committee, I want to ratify our commitment with the global youth, especially the more vulnerable populations. And we really want to continue as a steering committee to renew our commitment with the goal of strengthening market-ready skills in 100,000 people, while also advocating for more inclusive workplaces. But of course, to actually deliver this reset of the social contract, we need to trust each other, we need multi-stakeholder collaboration, and we need to be willing to adapt. Because I think that my final thought and key takeaway is that the evolution of work, getting ready for the evolution of work, is similar to sailing, in the sense that the pessimist will complain about the wind, the optimist will expect that the wind is going to change, and the realist will adjust the sails. And to navigate to a better world of work, we need to be realist, adapt, and work together. Thank you.
I think that is great advice for all of us. Thank you. That was very helpful. Jimmy, let me try and see if your sound is working again, and we'll bring you back in for day one and your key highlights and priorities. Fortunately, we seem to have the same issue again. All right, we're gonna get the tech team to keep working on that, and hopefully we bring you back. Try just one more time. No, unfortunately, that's not working. All right, we're gonna. All right, Letty, big red movie.
So equity and inclusion are so often an afterthought, sprinkled atop existing plans, and our global systems were not designed to work for everyone. It really will take intentional effort to chart a path toward transformational change. And particularly in these times of fear and uncertainty, we have to keep showing up for Black and Brown youth and families, people living in poverty, people with disabilities, immigrants and refugees, women and girls, queer and trans people, and the planet. At the summit today, we heard about the business case for equity and justice, the need to walk the talk, to reimagine public policy processes, to reach those furthest behind the line of opportunity, and to push every person in a position of power to understand our power, privilege, and unconscious bias. I'm very optimistic about the opportunity to reimagine the arrangements and structures that seemed normal, but have really been called into question, and work together to build a more equitable and just society that works for everyone. So my call to action to organizations in the corporate and social sector and in government: We need to move beyond public statements and performative allyship and make diversity, equity, and inclusion a core business priority. How to do that? First, face into the data, the numbers, and the narrative to honor the humanity of those furthest from opportunity. Listen to and work with people most affected by systemic inequities to co-create solutions. This means both improving access to leadership opportunities within your organizations and creating formal ways for community voice and engagement real change behavior. It's all about structural and systems change, not just in your organizations, but in every institution. So we ask everyone to do your part to mobilize and catalyze cross-sector partners to do the same. So in closing, only by shifting power to communities of color can we really create this more equitable and just and inclusive society. So I call on everyone to make a commitment today to do your part to be a co-conspirator for justice.
Co-conspirator?
Thank you very much, Parv. I was doing a terrible job of following the appropriate order in terms of her speaking. Thank you for having corrected me, and thank you for coming in with today's outcomes. And I'm not only very proud of all of the work that the Global Shapers are doing, but also the commitments that were made today by a number of businesses around racial justice, around disability inclusion, around gender equality, and around LGBTI inclusion. I think this has been one of the most important achievements at the summit today. So thank you for that. Let me go to you, Panos, and come back to you with this.
Hey, Google, what does inclusion mean?
Inclusion has 3 different meanings. Starting with the most common one, inclusion can be used as a noun to mean the action or state of including or of being included within a group or structure, as in, federal legislation now mandates the inclusion of students who are English language learners. Is that the meaning you had in mind?
I don't know, but you could tell me another one.
It says in Wikipedia that a cockroach can hold its breath for 40 minutes.
That's not what I meant. Whatever.
Skills-related question. And I know that you've driven forward a very impactful initiative as well. So share with us your highlights and your priorities.
Thanks, Aria, and congrats on yet another amazing summit. Having to deliver remarks after Parv feels like having to sing opera after Maria Callas, but I'll do my best. So three main takeaways on my side is first on the coordination side. I guess the silver lining of COVID is that there is a growing realization that skills is now the new currency. And we really need to see this post-COVID momentum to foster coordination, both at a global, but also at a local level. As a society, we are paying a very heavy price for poor coordination efforts, which amongst others, accelerates inequality, hinders all recovery efforts across the board. So we really need a global, trusted amplifier to lead those coordination efforts. And I believe that the forum is, by any measure, the most befitting organization to take up on this role. But we should know that coordination efforts, trusted amplifier to lead those coordination efforts. And I believe that the forum is, by any measure, the most befitting organization to take up on this role. But we should not underestimate the local level as well. And a great example is what you just mentioned, the Skills Accelerator that we are jointly launching in Greece. And we are very excited about that to build on.
Hey Google, how many members are there in the World Economic Forum?
1,000. On the website weforum.org, they say, the World Economic Forum's 1,000 institutional member companies are at the heart of all the forum's activities, and their support is essential in helping find truly sustainable and global solutions to improve the state of the world.
The amazing impact that we had partnering with many of the organizations represented in your summit, like Microsoft, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, and others, rolling out nationwide employment and skilling initiatives. Now, point number 2 is really about automation and the impact on jobs. So McKinsey recently ran a study looking on jobs, and what came out is no job is fully one thing. You've got to look into the constituent activities and the impact of AI in each one of them to really understand the landscape of risks and opportunities. So the pattern that has emerged was that obviously we're going to have jobs gained, jobs lost, jobs changed, but the delta between jobs gained and jobs lost will be positive eventually, which is a good thing. Now, the tricky part is how we manage the transitions. The share of jobs and occupations that can be fully automated in terms of all of their constituent activities is actually relatively small, and it will remain so. So how we're managing those transitions in terms of job change. Here at Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI, we do a lot of research on how to design those new generation of deep technologies, having human at the center. So design those technologies to augment and complement versus replace humans, in particular, given the 100 million or something new tech jobs projected to be needed, as your team announced yesterday. Third point and final on my side is really about empathy. So in those very trying times, whereas institutional alignment and action is of course critical, we should not forget of the importance of empathy, and not only as a soft skills. Little acts of empathy, and not only as a soft skills.
Hey Google, what's e-socials?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Little acts of kindness can literally change people's lives, as we've seen again and again with 3 generations in Greece. I can't help but mention my former professor at the business school and renowned philanthropist Laura Andreessen, who used to say that each one of us can be an individual philanthropist. We just need to pick our currency, whether it's capital, time, whatever sort of resources. So make no mistake, wherever you live, there is a civil society organization out there that needs you. We are talking about skills. We've seen again and again across the world that the lack of social capital is a huge barrier to opportunity, in particular for youth. So whatever time you have available, please reach out, mentor someone, help them to reskill, upskill themselves, teach them something, help them to elevate their status. At the end of the day, beyond all this technical conversation on skills and jobs, we shall never forget that fundamentally, we rise by lifting others. So it's not about the future of work in abstract technical terms, but most critically about the future of workers and the work of the future.
I want to make is when we look at the definition of a new social contract, of course, we want to define policies to address all the issues. But what is important for me, if I look particularly at the impact of the fourth industrial revolution, to a certain extent also if I look at the disruptive nature of and the structural change which will follow of COVID, I think we should use this social contract as an expression of the transition of one world to another world. When we look back, we are still living in the age, to a certain extent, of the first, second, and third industrial revolution. Our life is still determined by production and consumption. But if we look at the rise of, let's say, technologies which will facilitate work, which will take over work, not replace us, I think the key narrative which we should have is to move from a society which is built on production and consumption to a society which is built on caring and sharing. I think if we can integrate those two notions into the new social contract, then we really have changed the page, turned the page. And actually, it's needed because the technological forces provide us with this great opportunity to go to a new, and I'm a very, how should we, as you see, I'm an optimist. I believe at a better future. I think the history of humankind is going, even if there are setbacks, but from achievement to achievement. And the next achievement should be to build a society of sharing and caring. So let me conclude this summit also by saying it is just a step in a process. And actually, Sadia, you have already lined out what should be the milestones of achievement in the next 3 years, in 21, in 22, and in 23. We will also integrate those discussions into our big reset initiative. So thank you all. You have already given also thanks to the shapers. I would like to join you in appreciating to have you in the final session. I think it's symbolic. Of course, so many people have contributed to the success of this meeting, and I think we can speak about the success looking at the engagement everybody had. But I want to thank you, Sadia, and your team, because 4 days with so many sessions, you have shown not only intellectual leadership with your team, but great passion, because I know this is for you not just one of the many, let's say, challenges. It's for you a passion. It's for your passion. And I would end because with, let's say, some hiccup in our Nigerian communication, I want to thank also the technical team, because we are now in the age of virtual interaction, and I think
grateful for this opportunity. I think I want to start by saying that the theme of, or the topic of economic growth, revival, and transformation really hit home for me, particularly at this time in my home country of Nigeria, where we are experiencing, as the rest of the world, a healthcare shock, an economic shock, but also a social upheaval, where we have young people who are protesting for their right to end police brutality, but also to see better governance, and who really just want inclusive and sustainable economic growth and revival. And so the urgency of this summit really is not lost on me. From the day one, one of the major points that I took home was that the direction of our vision is key. And that's because we will head in the direction of our vision. And so when we begin to think of ideas that were expressed, such as the concept of net zero on unemployment as the direction that corporates can envision as they look at ESG investing, so environmental, social, and corporate governance. That's a concept that we need to really take to heart and ensure that we're heading in that direction. Our eyes must really aim for a net zero on unemployment. And so as panelists were speaking about upskilling not being an abstract concept, that really hit home for me. But corporates aren't the only stakeholders who need to have their visions aligned. Policymakers are really the levers, the greatest levers for social change. And so for policymakers, really it's back to the basics, investing in basic infrastructure, such as broadband internet in order to bridge the digital divide, investing in education and across all age spectrums, right? So from very early childhood education to adult learning or reskilling. But third, persisting with a mindset of optimism despite the.
Hey Google, what is global reskilling?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hard truths of a broken social contract that many young people around the world are feeling today. So it's the Stockdale paradox, if we will. We also need from governments active labor market policies, and something that I thought was quite interesting that I learned was the need for trade finance instruments to help facilitate shipment of goods across borders, even in this pandemic, and recognizing that indeed trade has literally been a lifesaver for us during the pandemic. But not only do we need to adjust our vision, and even as Professor Schwab has underlined, we need to reset our minds. So having a mind shift from this concept of shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. We need to reset our thinking from really aiming for job security to employment security, where our focus is ensuring that the labor force can continue to train, reskill, retrain, and always be in a position to contribute to the economy. Only then can we be guaranteed that we have economic revival, and all stakeholders, including young people, are involved. And so what can young people do? I think there is, we've heard some of my global shapers share their ideas and commitments, but individually also committing to lifelong learning and recognizing that we also have a proactive stance to take. We're not just being acted upon by other stakeholders, but we are agents of change in our right. And by really engaging in this lifelong learning, we have an opportunity to ensure that not only are we getting knowledge, but we're connecting with others and building alliances and engaging with different stakeholders to ensure that we really have that transformational impact, inclusive growth that we're looking for. So yes, indeed, the pandemic has jolted us out of the illusion that the status quo is going to last or that is ever going to be sustainable. And truly, only a reset of our minds, only a reset of how we think can really bring the revival and transformation that we're looking for. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I'm very glad we and transformation that we're looking at, of how we think can really bring the revival and transformation that we're looking for. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
I'm bored as fuck to death. No call in today. That's cool.
Changed and how much further we have to go. Subscribe to World vs. Virus.
And that is testing, contact tracing, ensuring you have very good medical facilities, very good communication of how the health situation is evolving in your countries. That we have seen, if you look at which countries are having greater success in recovering, that is a number one factor. The second factor is countries that are putting in substantial fiscal measures to help their households and their workers and their firms. Those also are the ones where we are seeing a recovery coming back up. So those are two big blocks. I think an important next step, what's needed, is as medical solutions are available and vaccines get discovered, that they're produced at sufficient scale, that they can be made available to everybody in the world as fast as humanly possible. And that is another big initiative that's needed. I want to be optimistic, and I want to say that that the world will come together and we will come out of this eventually in a stronger form in terms of globalization, global cooperation, in a better form for sure. But I am worried at this point. We entered this crisis already with weakening appetite for globalization and countries looking more inward. And this crisis has accelerated that, partly because of the nature of this crisis. As you've seen, there's been shutdowns on travel across borders. Global supply chains have broken down because individual countries are locking down their firms. But of course, the bigger concern is that countries will then turn more protectionist, decide to move production more to their home, to their countries, to put controls on exports. And that has been a big concern, especially with respect to medical supplies. So we are seeing that happening, and that is a major concern. So I think we just have to remind ourselves that the world has benefited tremendously, if not perfectly, from globalization. It has created a lot more jobs. It has reduced cross-country inequality by raising incomes in poorer countries. This has reduced poverty in many countries in the world. Now, it's not perfect. It needs to be fixed, and much more needs to be done. But at this stage, to move back into a very protectionist stance and, drastically cut interactions with other countries in terms of goods and in terms of people will just make it very difficult to recover from this crisis, because firms rely on global production to get the cheapest inputs. If that is not available to them, then they just can't bring back workers onto their factories. So it's just going to make it that much more difficult.
Most of us haven't had to put our lives on the line working in hospitals treating patients with this new disease, so we wanted to hear from someone who does. Matt McCarthy, the author of several best-selling books, including one called Superbugs, The Race to Stop an Epidemic, is also a doctor at New York Presbyterian Hospital. We spoke to him at the end of March to find out how it felt as the virus was starting to take a serious hold in the US.
The people who see patients with me know that I value two traits in healthcare workers: toughness and kindness. And it's really not that hard to have one of those traits, but it can be really tough to put those two things together. And what I'm seeing day after day is just extraordinary displays of toughness and kindness from people in all walks of life. And so, I don't wake up every day feeling frustrated or feeling angry. I'm just fully engaged and focused and really just proud to be part of this community that's responding to a pandemic. If it becomes endemic, and it's something that we have to live with year in and year out, then it may become akin to influenza, where there is a vaccine. Influenza kills between 25 and 69,000 Americans every year. It's kind of almost unthinkable to imagine there's going to be another virus that's doing something similar. But these are the kind of things we have to consider and to forecast for. And that's why there's a lot of work with vaccines right now. The role of vaccination is going to be crucial for us to combat this virus that probably is going to be around for a while. Some people feel like we've been in this for a while now, but those of us who do forecasting and mathematical modeling know the worst is yet to come. We've got weeks and weeks of this ahead of us. And so we aren't just planning for the day-to-day operations. We're looking at months from now, how things are going to play out. And that's what keeps a lot of us up at night.
Doctor and author Matt McCarthy telling us at the end of March that the worst was yet to come. He was right about that, and we still don't know how long this will last. Few people in the world have been unaffected by the coronavirus, but some have had it harder than others. Think of single parents in lockdown, people in violent households, or those with serious underlying health problems. To get one unique perspective, we spoke to YouTuber Molly Burke, who is blind.
My hands are my eyes, and so I'm always trying to cover my hand with my sleeve when I'm touching, a railing or a door handle. And the moment I get back home, I'm washing my hands again. But it's scary to think there are things that are unavoidable for me that other people wouldn't have to touch or do. At the end of the day, I have a guide dog. I have to get my dog out. I'm lucky that my dog is particularly who can be in a room of 100 people.
The world's most vulnerable, We dedicated an episode to how COVID would hit refugees with voices from Pakistan and Kenya, and the head of the International Rescue Committee, former British Foreign Secretary David Miliband, laid out the scale of the problem.
If you think it is really terrifying to face the prospect of COVID in an advanced industrialized country, if you're worried about ventilators in New York City, if you're concerned about the health system in Italy, just imagine what it's like to face the prospect of a virus where there isn't running water, where there isn't a proper health system, where densities of population are not just the 25,000 people per square mile that New York City has, but the 40 to 70,000 people per square kilometre that are packed in to Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, where there are 1 million refugees from Myanmar. The disease is being recorded in the world's conflict hotspots. It's being recorded in Syria, it's spiking in Afghanistan, it's being seen in Somalia, the conflict zones of the world, which in the main have the worst health systems and the greatest danger to public health. I really want to call out to people what it means to lack a health infrastructure. 1 ventilator in Sierra Leone, 6, I believe, in Burkina Faso, 13 in the huge Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a very clear lesson in this, that universal health coverage is 1 million miles away for the people that we're talking about. But also that this disease can't be allowed to run riot until it overwhelms an already weak health system.
David Miliband talking to World vs. Virus in early April. Before COVID-19, the last pandemic that left a huge mark on the world was the so-called Spanish flu of 1918. We spoke to journalist Laura Spinney.
Started out as a pandemic flu, which was much more virulent because it was new in the human population, and then gradually over time it evolved, it mutated in order to become more benign and to sort of live in a more harmonious relationship with humanity. That was particularly virulent, though, the 1918 pandemic flu. And there are lots of theories for why that was. Some of them have to do, and they're not mutually exclusive, some of them have to do with the inherent biology of that virus. And some of them have to do with the state of the world at the time, because that pandemic obviously emerged at a time when the world was at war. The first viruses had been identified at the end of the 19th century. So when the Spanish flu erupted, we had germ theory, so people understood that microbes caused infectious diseases, but almost every doctor in the world thought they were dealing with a bacterial disease. And that kind of shapes the whole story. It means they had no reliable diagnostic test, it means they had no really good treatments, and it's sort of the reason why it was called many different things, and therefore we have a problem counting the dead as well. Amongst those who were very vulnerable to the Spanish flu were the 20 to 40-year-olds. So normally flu is most dangerous to young children and to the very old. But in 1918, bizarrely, it was this middle age group. And within that age group, it looks as if men were more vulnerable than women overall, globally, though there were regional variations. Pregnant women were particularly vulnerable. And they died or survived and had miscarriages at frighteningly high numbers. One of the theories is that the massive inflammatory reaction that the virus provoked in the lungs, it drew all the body's resources to fight this infection and took those resources away from the womb and the growing fetus, and that's what provoked the miscarriages. But the point is that not all those babies died. Some of them lived to be born. And we have to assume that those babies survived those enormous physiological stresses while they were in the womb. And in fact, that generation, we know they were minutely smaller than cohorts either side. They were smaller physically, which is a kind of reflection, I think, of the stresses on their physical organs while in the womb. So that generation were physically and cognitively slightly reduced. They also, as they grew up, were more likely to suffer from heart attacks, to go to prison. All sorts of bad things were associated with that bad early start in life. And it was a really unfortunate generation, because they're also the ones who came of age just in time to go and fight in the Second World War. For me, that is the lost generation of the early 20th century, because there must have been millions of them.
Laura Spinney's book is called Pale Rider, The Spanish Flu of 1918 and How It Changed the World. If a virus could sing, this is what it might sound like. Marcus Buller, a professor of engineering at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, created this sound impression of COVID-19 by assigning musical notes to the various spiky parts of the virus. We spoke to Professor Buller to find out why he'd done it.
What you hear is a musical representation of the virus spike protein, which is the protein that affects the human cells. It's sort of counterpoint music where many different melodies are overlaid in different rhythms to represent the structural arrangement of this particular protein. We're interested in finding new ways of modeling matter. We usually model matter by the position of atoms, but of course, if you think about materials at the nanoscale, you look at atoms, they don't actually look like they look in a chemistry textbook because atoms and molecules are continuously moving. So they kind of look like a vibrating string, actually. We began to think about building models of materials through their vibrational spectra, and that led us to exploration at the musical side of things. That is something we have been thinking about, to use the knowledge of the nanoscopic vibrations as a way of actually disintegrating the structure. You can imagine this being the equivalent of the...
Hey Google, what is a nanoscopic vibration?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, nanoscopic vibration.
Sorry, I don't understand.
A singer singing a tone, you can imagine this being nanoscopic vibration. That is something we have been thinking about, to use the knowledge of the nanoscopic vibrations as a way of actually disintegrating the structure. You can imagine this being the equivalent of nanoscopic vibration. That is something we have been thinking about, to use the knowledge of the nanoscopic vibrations as a way of actually disintegrating the structure.
Hey Google, nanoscopic vibration disintegration.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Hey Google, disintegration weapons.
On the website lexicanum.com, they say, disintegration weapons are a type of human archaeotech. Do you want a little more context?
I want a lot of context.
I understood. Can you give me more context? Is that right?
No. No.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Hey Google, nanoscopic vibration weapons.
Sorry, I don't understand.
What did I say? Hey Google, nanoscopic vibration disintegration weapons.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Hey Google, nanoscopic vibration disintegration.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Damn it. I shouldn't have talked shit. Hey Google, nanoscopic vibration disintegration.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Hey Google, what is a disintegration weapon?
On the website lexicanum.com, they say, disintegration weapons are a type of human archaeotech. Do you want a little more context?
Yes.
Disintegration weapons are a type of human archaeotech. Relics from the dark age of technology, these weapons can reduce a target to atoms in the blink of an eye. Though highly dangerous, few remain in imperial use, and the ones that do are revered beyond measure.
What the fuck? What? Hey Google, what is human archaeotech?
On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, archaeotech is the term in Low Gothic used throughout the Imperium of Man to refer to formerly lost advanced human scientific knowledge and technology from the Dark Age of Technology, the Age of Strife, or even the Imperium's own Golden Age during the Great Crusade that can be recovered in the present time.
Hey Google, repeat that.
Sure. On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, archaeotech is the term in Low Gothic used throughout the Imperium of Man to refer to formerly lost advanced human scientific knowledge and technology from the Dark Age of Technology, the Age of Strife, or even the Imperium's own Golden Age during the Great Crusade that can be recovered in the present time.
Hey Google, repeat that.
Sure. On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, Archaeotech is the term in Low Gothic used throughout the Imperium of Man to refer to formerly lost advanced human scientific knowledge and technology from the Dark Age of Technology, the Age of Strife, or even the Imperium's own Golden Age during the Great Crusade that can be recovered in the present time.
They say, Archaeotech is the term in Low Gothic used throughout the Imperium of Man.
Hold on. Hey Google, what's Low Gothic?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, what's the Imperial of Man?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, formerly lost advanced human scientific knowledge.
On the website lumenlearning.com, they say, scientific knowledge is advanced through a process known as the scientific method. Do you want a little more context?
Sure.
Scientific knowledge is advanced through a process known as the scientific method. Basically, ideas are tested against the real world, and those empirical observations lead to more ideas that are tested against the real world, and so on.
Hey Google, what's the Dark Age of Technology?
On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, the Age of Technology, informally often referred to as the Dark Age of Technology, was the zenith of mankind's scientific knowledge and technological power in the Milky Way galaxy, which lasted from the 15th millennium AD until the onset of the Age of Strife in the 25th millennium.
Hey Google, what's the Age of Strife?
On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, the Age of Strife, also sometimes referred to as Old Night, based in the name for the era on Terra in older imperial histories, is the name for the chaotic and highly fragmented period of human history that began in the 25th millennium AD and ended in the 30th millennium.
30th millennium. Hey Google, how much is a millennium?
On the website Britannica.com, they say, millennium, a period of 1,000 years.
30,000 years. Damn. Hey Google, what's the Golden Age?
Here's the definition of Golden Age. An idyllic, often imaginary pastime of peace, prosperity, and happiness.
What's the Imperial's Golden Age? Hey Google, what's the Imperial's Golden Age?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, what's the Great Crusade?
On the website fandom.com, they say, the Great Crusade was the period in the early history of the Imperium of Man, lasting from approximately 798. Do you want a little more context?
Yeah. Hey Google, what's the Great Crusade?
On the website wh40k.lexicanum.com, they say, the Great Crusade, approximately 798, M30-005, M31, was a brief age of rebuilding and reunification following the complete regression of mankind during the Age of Strife.
Hey Google, what happened to mankind in the Age of Strife?
On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, the Age of Strife followed the Age of Technology as human civilization collapsed in widespread insanity, demonic possession, anarchy, and interstellar civil war.
Hey Google, when was the Age of Technology?
According to Wikipedia, the Information Age is a historical period that began in the mid-20th century, characterized by a rapid epochal shift from the traditional industry established by the Industrial Revolution to an economy primarily based upon information technology.
Hey Google, what happened to the humans in the Age of Strife?
On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, the Age of Strife followed the Age of Technology as human civilization collapsed in widespread insanity, demonic possession, anarchy, and interstellar civil war.
Shit about to happen again. That's all God. So, get some kind of weapon. Let's get back to this. Hey Google, what's archaeotech?
On the website warhammer40k.fandom.com, they say, archaeotech is the term in Low Gothic used throughout the Imperium of Man to refer to formerly lost advanced human scientific knowledge and technology from the Dark Age of Technology, the Age of Strife, or even the Imperium's own Golden Age during the Great Crusade that can be recovered in the present time.
Hey Google, what kind of archaeotech has been discovered in modern time?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, what kind of archaeotech do we have in modern time?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, who has archaeotech in modern time?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, disintegration weapon.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Hey Google, disintegration weapon.
On the website lexicanum.com, they say, disintegration weapons are a type of human archaeotech. Do you want a little more context?
Yeah.
Disintegration weapon. Disintegration weapons are a type of human archaeotech. Relics from the Dark Age of Technology. These weapons can reduce a target to atoms in the blink of an eye. Though highly dangerous, few remain in Imperial use, and the ones that do are revered beyond measure.
Hey Google, what is Imperial use?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Hey Google, Imperial use.
On the website worldpopulationreview.com, they say, the imperial system is used for measurements including area, mass, and volume. For length, units of measurement in the imperial system includes inches, feet, links, yards, poles, miles, and leagues, just to name a few. When measuring area, imperial units include square feet, perches, roods, and acres.
Hey Google, Imperial.
I found a few locations for Imperial near you. The first one is Imperial Vapor at 227 Snelling Avenue North, St. Paul.
Google.
The second one is
Stop.
Imperial...
You can imagine this being the equivalent of the opera singer singing a tone when the glass breaks. You have seen those videos of physics experiments where you have certain frequencies that actually excite resonance in a structure which can break a microscopic object. I do a lot of research on fracturing materials. A lot of times we're trying to prevent fracturing from happening, but in this case we actually are trying to find a pathway to deliberately destroy a structure. You can imagine finding matching rhythm and counterpoint to an existing melody to match what we have in our sight.
Using music to destroy coronavirus. If it happens, remember you heard it here first. That was Marcus Buller of MIT. You can find the full versions of all the interviews featured here. Just search for World vs. Virus on Apple, SoundCloud, Spotify.